What is going on, Not Move Nation? Welcome to the Not Move podcast. Today is February 26th at 1:39 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be breaking down today's NBA slate with you guys. Thank you to the supporters, subscribers, and followers. We do appreciate you guys very much. Also, thank you to our sponsors, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and W Energy Drinks. Then at 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, guys, we have A Train and Dollface Gremlin that are doing a hockey show on the Not Move podcast. Personally, I'm not the biggest hockey fan, but I've tuned into their show a few times and I'm getting my enthusiasm for hockey back if I've ever had any. They do a great job at, breaking down what's going on, and not just in the Olympics, but in the NHL as well. Um, yeah, so I usually get on early mornings, but this morning I was really going through all the data that I've collected over the past month or so in the NBA and was analyzing that data, looking at trends and whatnot. I work so hard to get you guys the information. Sometimes I forget about analyzing it, and it just it takes a lot. So I'm about to go over these injury updates with you guys, but I'm gonna let you guys know now. I'm doubtful to do a show tomorrow. Okay, I'm Joel and beating myself uh, and ruling myself as doubtful. Shout out Joel Embiid. I can't do him like that, man. He's good, man. No shade to you, Joel Embiid. I might botch some names today too. I take pride in trying to pronounce these names correctly. So, you know, what helps me, guys? I don't know. Maybe you guys talk about NBA or you're interested in talking about the NBA. There's a pronunciation guide on NBA.com, and it will you'll click play on the player's name and it will have them pronunciating their own name. It's pretty cool. Yeah, NBA.com pronunciation guide, because I think it's important when people are talking about sports to pronunciate athletes' names correctly. There's a lot of different reasons why. I won't get into all that though. Um, I talked about how I analyzed this data this morning, and so I came up with some picks today. I still have a lot of analyzation to do, so that's what I'm going to be doing as well tomorrow while I'm probably not doing a show tomorrow. But I'm not saying tail. I mean, if you want to go ahead, feel free to. Please do so at your own risk. But I was just analyzing some stuff, and tonight, I found some trends. Let's just see if it works. Let's see how well or how bad this does. Um, Now there are a couple of big favorites I have on the money line today, and I would still probably lean towards those teams on the spread. But what we're looking at is the Spurs on the money line, Mavericks on the money line, Rockets on the money line, Heat on the money line, and my least confident pick, it's my hot take of the day, Bulls money line. I think they're on a 10-game losing streak. All right, so let's go over the injuries for today. I look at rotowire.com for these injuries. I think they do a great job at updating these injuries. Okay, so let's talk about the players that are out today. Neesmith for Indiana out with an ankle issue. RotoWire updated that on February 22nd and said that he'd be out for at least 1 week. Zubac for Indiana out with an ankle issue. RotoWire updated that on February 17th and said that there was no timetable for his return. Jovic, Jovic, Jovic for Miami out with the back issue. Alex Soar for Washington out with a hamstring issue. RotoWire updated that on February 12th and said that he's expected to be back on February 28th. Keyshawn George for Washington out with a knee issue. Jalen Johnson for the Atlanta Hawks is out due to a hip issue. Avdia for Portland out with a back issue. Sharp for Portland out with a calf issue. Anthony Simons for Chicago out with a wrist issue. Cooper Flagg for Dallas out with a foot issue. PJ Washington for Dallas out with an ankle issue. Devin Booker for Phoenix out with a hip issue. Dylan Brooks for Phoenix out with a hand issue. Missy for the Pelicans out with a calf issue. Trey Murphy for the Pelicans out with a shoulder issue. Markkanen for Utah out with an ankle/hip issue. And then Keontae George for Utah out with an ankle issue. Obviously, there's still some more players that could be ruled out between now and game time. I would keep up to date with, this source, rotowire.com, or your favorite source for that information. Players that are doubtful to play. It's rare that I see a player is doubtful and they end up playing, but it does happen from time to time. But players that are doubtful, Pascal Siakam for Indiana, doubtful with a wrist issue. Jalen Smith for Chicago, doubtful with a calf issue. Pat Williams for Chicago, doubtful with a quad issue. Gafford for Dallas, doubtful with an ankle issue. And then there is just a bunch of players that are questionable today. Nimhard, questionable to play for the Pacers today due to a back issue. Obi Toppin could return today, is what they are saying. Looks like he's missed a long time for Indiana. His last game that he played was October 26th. He's looking there. He's technically listed as questionable, so he may be coming back today. Davion Mitchell for Miami Heat, questionable with an illness today. By the way, questionable players, there's typically about a 50-50 chance that they play. Sometimes, when players are on back-to-backs, meaning that they played the day before, you can kind of, gauge if they're going to be playing or not. You get to see players' routines. Norman Powell, questionable for Miami with a groin issue. Joel Embiid, probable to play. He is likely to play today with right shin soreness. Nickeil Alexander-Walker for Atlanta, questionable with a foot sprain. Rizachet for Atlanta, questionable to play with a hip contusion. Mason Plumlee for the San Antonio Spurs. Looks like they just ruled him out. He's out today for Brooklyn. Jalen Suggs for Orlando, questionable with a back issue. Robert Williams, questionable for the Blazers with a foot issue. Chris Middleton for Dallas, probable to play today with a shoulder issue. Hachimura for the Lakers, questionable to play with an illness. Jackson Hayes is probable to play today for the Lakers with an ankle issue. Cole Anthony is still going to be out for Phoenix, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. Due to recently being traded or something like that is what they're saying. Yeah, not with the team is what they're saying. Kawhi Leonard, questionable to play tonight for the Clippers. John Collins, questionable with a head/neck issue. Why is Kawhi questionable? Did I mention that? Questionable with a left ankle soreness. Okay. So let's break this first game down. We have the Charlotte Hornets at Indiana Pacers. Charlotte is on a 2-game win streak. Indiana 4-game losing streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. Indiana has won 3 regular season games in a row against Charlotte. These teams have played against each other twice this season, and Indiana leads the season series 2-0. The first meeting was on November 19th at Indiana, like it is here today. And Indiana won that game by 9 points, 127 to 118. The most recent meeting was on January 8th at Charlotte, and Indiana won 114 to 112, so by 2 points in that one. Also, you may want to double check me whenever I'm talking about career high in points leaders. But from my understanding, TJ McConnell scored his career high in points at Indiana against Charlotte on December 8th of 2024. He scored 30 total points. So if that's correct, and you like TJ McConnell going over his point total today, I think you have that historical advantage, and with the fact that he did score his career high against Charlotte in the same location that he's playing in today. When I checked this line last night, Charlotte was favored by 12.5. I checked all of these lines this morning at about 10 a.m. Eastern time. Charlotte is bumped up to minus 13.5. The over-under last night was 230.5. This morning it was 228.5. Looked at 3 different against the spread trends in this game, and Charlotte has advantages in all of those against the spread trends. Charlotte is the best team against the spread this season. Now, you may have a different source that you look at. I've been looking at teamrankings.com. So according to them, Charlotte has the best against the spread record in the NBA this season. They're 36-23. Indiana's 28-31. So I'll give Charlotte the advantage there. Charlotte, they're 6-3 against the spread as a road favorite. Indiana's 14-10 against the spread as a home underdog. So let me just make sure real quick. I'm usually pretty accurate on this, but I just want to get my calculator out real quick. 66%. Okay, yeah. So Charlotte still has the advantage there. I was just looking at win percentage. And then Charlotte, they're 15-12 against the spread after a win, compared to Indiana, who's 18-25 against the spread after a loss, which ranks third worst in the NBA. So I'll give Charlotte the advantage in that as well. Let's talk about Indiana's team defensive efficiency. I've mentioned what that was on previous shows. If you're confused about that or eager to know, I mentioned it on the past couple episodes on what that was. Indiana ranks 22nd in team defensive efficiency. So they're basically a below average defense. They allow the second most points in the paint per game to opposing teams. Miles Bridges is the leader for Charlotte in points in the paint per game and ranks 60th best in the NBA, followed by Kalkbrenner, who ranks 97th. All right. Usually I only look at the top 50 in the NBA and who leads these categories, but I did look a little bit further down the list today, specifically for this game, because I didn't see anybody for Charlotte in the top 50 of the NBA. So I wanted to at least give you guys somebody. So, so I think Miles Bridges. Now, I'm not looking at Miles Bridges' specific position on how Indiana defends against the Indiana Pacers, but one source that I have looked at in the past is NBA defense versus position. fantasypros.com. And, according to this source, Indiana allows the 7th most points per game to opposing power forwards, which is what Miles Bridges is projected to play today. All right. Obviously, if you're really interested in that prop, there's some other research you could do, how Miles Bridges performs against Indiana, at Indiana, and maybe against some of these players. Is he scoring at a higher rate this season? Are there any injuries where he could see an increase of usage rate? I don't talk about usage rate a whole lot, but I think that stuff really is important. but I have talked about that in the past. You can probably find a few episodes where I've talked about that usage rate. It is very important. And then Indiana does a good job at limiting those fast break points per game. They rank 11th best in that category, according to teamrankings.com. So above average at defending against that. Indiana allows the fewest 3-point field goals made per game to opposing teams. So I think that's really good for them today because, and they're going to need that defense because I know just off the top of my head here, LaMelo Ball, Knipple, Brandon Miller, and I believe even Miles Bridges, all four of them rank in the top 50 in the NBA in 3-point field goals made per game. So I think, that works with Indiana's defensive strength today. Indiana, they rank ninth best in assists allowed per game, so they're above average at limiting those assists, but they allow the second most rebounds per game to opposing teams. So Diabate is that leader for Charlotte in rebounds per game. He ranks 18th best in the NBA in rebounds per game. So depending on some other factors, I could see Diabate getting some boards tonight. And then Indiana does allow the third most free throw attempts to opposing teams this season. Brandon Miller is the leader for Charlotte in free throw attempts per game and ranks 50th best in the NBA in that category. So if you like Brandon Miller going over his point total tonight, I do think that he, according to this data, has a higher likelihood of seeing some more free throw attempts tonight than against some other teams that he's played against this season, considering Indiana allows the third most free throw attempts per game to opposing teams this season. Now let's talk about Charlotte's team defensive efficiency. They rank 16th in that category, so just slightly below average. They rank 15th in points in the paint allowed per game. So right at that average mark. I talked about how important those points in the paint are. Those are typically the higher percentage shots that are going to go in. Same with those free throws, right? Unless you're Steph Curry, then you can lay it up from half court. Okay. So Charlotte, they rank 15th in the points in the paint allowed per game. Siakam, who's doubtful today, leads the Pacers in points in the paint per game, ranks 10th best. And then it's Zubac, who ranks 11th. He's out today. Obi Toppin, I mentioned how he is questionable to play in this game. If he does play today, he is the points in the paint per game leader out of available Indiana Pacers tonight. He ranks 81st best in the NBA in that category, followed by Nembhard, who I mentioned was questionable. Nembhard, by the way, ranks 145th. So I went real far down the list here. TJ McConnell, 161, and Jay Huff, 214th. Okay. Charlotte fast break points allowed per game. They're slightly below average at defending against that. Siakam is the leader for the Pacers, who's doubtful to play tonight. He ranks 38th best in the NBA in fast break points per game. And then since he's doubtful tonight, meaning that he's probably won't play, Obi Toppin, again, is the leader for Indiana out of available Pacers today in fast break points per game, ranks 56th best in the NBA, followed by Nesmith, who's out today. Charlotte is slightly above average at defending against those 3-point field goals made per game to opposing teams. They rank 13th in that category. But if you do like an Indiana Pacer today hitting some threes, they're not going up against an extremely difficult team defense, right? Nembhard is the leader for the Pacers in 3-point field goals made per game, ranked 69th best in the NBA, followed by Siakam, who ranks 79th, and then Jarris Walker, who ranks 96th. Charlotte, they're about average at limiting those assists per game as well. They rank 14th in that category, so just a little bit above average. Nembhard is the leader for the Pacers in assists per game. He ranks 6th best in the NBA, followed by TJ McConnell, who ranks 40th. And then Charlotte allows the fewest rebounds per game to opposing teams. So, I would, unless I had a really good reason to take Indiana Pacer on some rebounds tonight, I mean, that's a red flag for me on Indiana rebound props. I'm not saying that, they go under every single time they go up against a team like Charlotte, but I mean, I would have to have a good reason to go with a Indiana, or maybe you guys like to just fade everything that everybody else takes, which that's cool. So if people are hesitant on taking any Pacers rebounds, maybe that's the spot that you like. And then opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. Charlotte ranks first in that category, so they limit those free throws very well. A very disciplined team in that regard. And then once again, another strength of theirs are those rebounds allowed per game. I don't even have a prediction on that game. I still have to analyze more stuff. All right. Miami at Philly. Miami's on a 1-game losing streak. Philly 2-game win streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. Miami has won 5 regular season games in a row against Philadelphia. These teams have played against each other one time this season, and that game was on November 23rd at Philadelphia, like it is here today. And Miami won by 10 points, 127 to 117. Miami has a 3-3 money line record on Thursdays this season. The Sixers have a 5-2 money line record on Thursdays this season. Miami has won 4 consecutive games against any team that they've played on this exact date, February 26th. Philadelphia has lost 6 consecutive games against any team that they've played on February 26th. When I looked at this line yesterday and today, it hasn't changed. It may be different now, okay? I looked once again. The last time I looked at these lines was at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So today. So last night and this morning, Philadelphia was minus 1.5, favored by 1.5 points. The over-under last night was 239.5. This morning, it was 240.5. Looked at those 3 different against the spread trends, and Miami wins all of those trends. Miami has the 3rd best against the spread record in the NBA. Philadelphia has the 7th best. So I'll give Miami the advantage there. Miami, they're 13-9 against the spread as a road underdog, whereas Philadelphia's 8-12 against the spread as a home favorite. So I'll give Miami the advantage there as well. And then Miami's 20-7 against the spread after a loss. Philadelphia's 14-17 against the spread after a win. So I'll give Miami the advantage there. All right. Miami, they rank 5th best in team defensive efficiency. This is the best example of how team defensive efficiency works is Miami. Because they have a good defense, but they play at such a fast pace. They allow, a lot of points in the paint per game, 3-point field goals per game, assists per game, rebounds per game. And that's just because of their pace of play. When you take the pace of play out of the equation, they have a top 5 defense. Excuse me. Go get that water. All right, so Philadelphia. let's talk about their team defensive efficiency. They're average. They're ranked 15th in that category. They're a little bit above average at limiting those points in the paint per game. Philly ranks 13th in that category. Where Philadelphia is vulnerable is those fast break points allowed per game. They allow the 4th most. Norman Powell is the leader for Miami in fast break points per game, ranks 11th best in the NBA, followed by Tyler Hero, who ranks 26th, Andrew Wiggins, 48th, and then Jaquez ranks 64th. 3-point field goals allowed per game to opposing teams. Philadelphia is slightly above average at defending against that. They rank 12th best in that category. They allow the 7th most assists per game to opposing teams. Davion Mitchell is the leader for Miami in assists per game, ranks 10th best in the NBA, followed by Jaquez, who ranks 41st. Rebounds allowed per game. Philadelphia ranks 23rd in that category, so slightly below average. Bam Adebayo is the leader for Miami, ranks 10th best in the NBA, followed by Khalil Ware, who ranks 11th. Opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. Philadelphia ranks 22nd in that category. So they're a little bit below average. Norman Powell is the leader for Miami, ranks 24th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game, followed by Bam Adebayo, who ranks 31st. And, I know Jaquez is somewhat of a popular bench player. He typically comes off the bench. If you're interested in a prop like that, what I think could be valuable is looking at how Philadelphia defends. How many bench points do they allow per game to opposing teams? Per game. I think if you get uh, how much they've allowed all season, that number can be misleading. Per game, I think, is the best way to go. Okay. Philadelphia, like I just mentioned, okay, yeah, we just talked about them. So let's talk about Miami's defense. I mentioned that they ranked fifth best in team defensive efficiency, but since their pace of play is so fast, they rank 22nd in points in the paint allowed per game, so slightly below average at defending against that. Maxey is the leader for Philadelphia, ranks 18th best in the NBA in points in the paint per game, followed by Embiid, who ranks 35th. And then Miami, they rank 14th in fast break points allowed per game, so just a little bit below average at defending against, or above average at defending against that. Maxey is the leader, not just on Philadelphia, but in the entire NBA. He leads the NBA in fast break points per game, followed by Beauchamp, who ranks 34th, Grimes, who ranks 67th, Edgecombe 77th, Oubre 92nd. Miami, they a little bit below average at defending against those 3-point field goals made per game to opposing teams as well. They rank 21st in that category. Maxey, again, is the leader for Philadelphia in 3-point field goals made per game. He ranks 7th best in the NBA, followed by Edgecombe, who ranks 53rd, Grimes at 76th. And then let's see here. Miami, they allow the sixth most assists per games to opposing teams. So Maxey is the leader for Philadelphia in assists per game, ranks 12th best in the NBA. Then Miami allows the fifth most rebounds per game. Did I say the fifth most assists allowed per game for Miami? It's the sixth most. And then for rebounds, though, they allow the fifth most rebounds per game to opposing teams. So Drummond is the leader for Philadelphia in rebounds per game, ranked 16th best in the NBA. I don't know why Embiid's not up on that list. My guess is that he's missed some games this year and he's just like not eligible for official statistics would be my guess, but we know Embiid can get some rebounds, right? Okay. And then Miami does rank 7th best in opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. So they're pretty disciplined in that regard. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, I got to lean Miami here. Money line now. They are underdogs. So let's just see if the trends that I looked at before I came onto the show work or not. All right. Then Washington at Atlanta. Washington 2-game losing streak. Atlanta 2-game win streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. Atlanta's won 2 regular season games in a row against Washington. Atlanta, these teams have played against each other 3 times this season, and Atlanta has won 2 out of 3 of those matchups. The first game was on November 25th at Washington. This one, again, today is in Atlanta, okay? But Washington won that game by, 19 points, 132 to 113. Then the second game was on December 6th at Washington, and Atlanta won that by 15 points, 131 to 116. The most recent game was, 2 days ago at Atlanta, like it is here today, and Atlanta won 119 to 98. Washington has a 3-4 money line record on Thursdays this season, and so does Atlanta. They're both 3-4 on the money line on Thursdays this season. Washington has lost 3 consecutive games that they've played against any team on this exact date, February 26th. You may want to double check this if you're interested. CJ McCollum, from my understanding, scored his career high in points on January 3rd of 2025 at and he's the projected starting point guard today for Atlanta. He scored his career high in points on January 3rd, 2025. That game was in New Orleans since he played for New Orleans at that time, but it was against Washington. He scored 50 total points in that game. So if you do like CJ McCollum going over his point total tonight for some reason, I think you have that added benefit with the fact that he scored his career high against this same team. Not in the same location, though. And with Jalen Johnson being out, I would look at those player usage rates, and we can do it real quick. Player usage rate, Atlanta Hawks. Let's see and this basically dictates how important a player is to their offense. Kuminga is actually the leader after that first game that he played. He's the leader in usage rate. Now, that's a very small sample size. It's going to be interesting to see what Atlanta does tonight. But then with Trae Young not being there and Jalen Johnson, the next man up is CJ McCollum in that usage rate. And then it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So, yeah, I think Kuminga and McCollum could see a lot of usage tonight. Koulibaly for Washington. He's the projected power forward today for Washington. If you guys like his points today for some reason, from my understanding, he scored his career high in points against Atlanta. That this game was at Washington, though, on October 30th of 2024. He scored 27 total points. When I looked at this line yesterday, Atlanta was favored by 12.5. When I looked at 10 a.m. Eastern time this morning, Atlanta was favored by 10.5, so that line's dropped. And I think with Jalen Johnson getting ruled out probably not too long ago, maybe that line's dropped an extra point or so. Would be my guess. Okay. I looked at 3 different against the spread trends in this game. I give Atlanta advantages in 2 out of 3 of those trends. Washington overall has the 3rd worst against the spread record in the NBA. They're 24-33. Atlanta's 29-31, so I'll give Atlanta the advantage there. Washington has the 2nd worst against the spread record as a road underdog in the NBA. They're 10-17, but Atlanta has the worst against the spread record as a home favorite this season. They're 4-10 against the spread. So I'll give Washington the advantage there due to that winning percentage. And then Atlanta, they're 14-14 against the spread after a win. Washington's 19-21 against the spread after a loss. So I'll give Atlanta the advantage there. Washington, they are the 3rd worst team in regards to team defensive efficiency. They typically do not have a good defense. They rank 24th in points in the paint allowed per game, so they're below average at defending against that. With Jalen Johnson being out tonight, the next leader in points in the paint per game is Dyson Daniels, who ranks 42nd. And then fast break points allowed per game. Washington allows the 5th most fast break points per game to opposing teams, with Jalen Johnson being out tonight. Nickeil Alexander-Walker does rank 7th best in the NBA in fast break points per game, but he's questionable from my understanding tonight. Questionable to play. But then let's say he's out. The next man up is going to be Riza Shea, who's questionable as well. Let's say both of those guys are out. CJ McCollum will be that leader for Atlanta in fast break points per game if all 3 of those guys are ruled out. Jalen Johnson, Alexander Walker, and Riza Shea. McCollum ranks 70th best in the NBA in fast break points per game. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but Riza Shea ranks 40th. Okay. Washington allows the 6th most 3-point field goals made per game to opposing teams. So Nickeil Alexander-Walker is that leader for Atlanta, ranks 13th best in the NBA in that category, followed by CJ McCollum, who ranks 29th. Okongwu ranks 59th. So he's actually not too bad for being a center at hitting threes. And then it's Jalen Johnson, who ranks 99th Washington allows the second most assists per game to opposing teams. With Jalen Johnson being out, the next man up is going to be Dyson Daniels, who ranks 21st best in the NBA in assists per game. But, I think whenever you have a big time player like Jalen Johnson being out, that makes things a little bit more difficult to pick up those assists. But I think Atlanta is strong enough offensively to where it won't be much of a problem. Maybe it is. Um, let's say that I'm the assist per game leader, right, for my team, and all of my main players are out. You know what I mean? Like LeBron's out, Doncic is out, um, Reeves is out, and I'm going up against a bad team, limiting those assists, right? Just hypothetically speaking. When I pass the ball to these other guys, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult for me to pick up those assists just because they're not as offensively as strong as those guys that have been ruled out, But I think Atlanta's solid offensively. He's got Kaminga, Kongu, McCullough, maybe Alexander Walker, Rizashay. Going up against a bad defense. Okay. And then rebounds allowed per game. Washington allows the most rebounds per game to opposing teams, with Jalen Johnson being out, who ranks eighth best in the NBA in rebounds per game. The next leader for Atlanta is going to be Okongwu, who ranks 26th, Dyson Daniels, who ranks 47th. And then, Washington, they allow the fourth most free throw attempts per game to opposing teams, with Jalen Johnson being out, who ranks 28th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game. The next leader for Atlanta in free throw attempts per game is going to be Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But let's talk about Atlanta's defense. They rank 17th in team defensive efficiency, so slightly below average in that regard. They rank 23rd in points in the paint allowed per game. With all of their injuries that they got going on and whatnot, the leader for them in points in the paint per game for Washington, the only guy that I saw on the list was Alondes Williams, who ranks 150th. But I'm interested on maybe where, and I haven't seen a lot of him. You guys probably have a better idea than I do about it. But Vucevic for Washington, I'm interested to see if maybe he's good at scoring points in the paint. That's something else that I would check on if I were interested in any Washington props. Atlanta, they allow the sixth most fast break points per game to opposing teams. So Alondes Williams ranks eighth best in the NBA in fast break points per game, followed by Whitmore, who ranks 14th, and then Koulibaly, who ranks 83rd. Atlanta slightly below average at defending against those 3-point field goals made per game. They rank 16th in that category. Keyshawn George is the leader for Washington, but I believe he's out, right? I think I mentioned that at the start of the show. Yeah, according to rotowire.com, he's out. So the next man up and that leads Washington in 3-point field goals made per game is going to be Bub Carrington, who ranks 64th, and then Trey Johnson, who ranks 68th. The cool thing about this Fantasy Pros thing is that you can filter it by how many 3-point field goals a team allows to a specific position. Atlanta, they rank 19th, so a little bit below average in defending against the assists per game to opposing teams. With George being out, who ranks 42nd. The next man up is Bub Carrington, who ranks 43rd best in the NBA in assists per game. And then I didn't get a chance to get a rebounds per game leader with Alex Sor being out. But if you are interested in a rebound prop for Washington today, Atlanta does allow the 7th most rebounds per game to opposing teams. And then Atlanta's slightly below average in opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. They rank 18th in that category. With Alex Sor being out and Keyshawn George being out, I thought George was, when I was looking this morning, George was going to play. But, if your Washington player prop for points that you like today, is decent at getting to the free throw line, I think he's got a better chance to do so today than maybe some other matchups. And, just worth noting, I mentioned that these teams played a couple days ago. Kaminga is projected to be in the starting lineup today. So let's say it's a blowout again. Atlanta won by a lot, right? It was, yeah, they won by what, 21 points a couple days ago in the same matchup. If it's like, and I think the starters had problems picking up their player props, their stats, because it was that game was somewhat of a blowout, right? And that's why Kaminga did so well. I think he got a lot of time off the bench. So if he's starting today, maybe he won't, really be seeing the time that he did off the bench if it's a blowout again. I'm not saying that it's going to be, but it could very well could be, you know. All right, next game we have the San Antonio Spurs at Brooklyn Nets. The Spurs are on a 10-game win streak. Spurs are on a 10-game win streak. Brooklyn's on a 5-game losing streak. The Spurs did play yesterday, but the Brooklyn Nets did not. The Spurs have won 4 regular season games in a row against Brooklyn. The Spurs have beat Brooklyn one time earlier this season. That game was on October 26th at San Antonio, and San Antonio won by 11 points, 118 to 107. The Spurs have an 8-0 money line record on Thursdays this season, 8-0, and Brooklyn's 0-6 on the money line on Thursdays this season. The Spurs have lost 3 consecutive games that they've played against any team on this exact date, February 26th. And then, from my understanding, you may want to double check me on this, but Devin Vassell scored his career high in points against Brooklyn on March 4th, 2025, at San Antonio. This game's in Brooklyn, but he scored 37 total points in that game. Also, from my understanding, Keldon Johnson for the Spurs scored his career high in points on January 17th of 2023 at San Antonio against Brooklyn, 36 total points. So from my understanding, Vassell and Keldon Johnson, have both scored their career high in points against Brooklyn. So if you like any, I'm not saying take them both over their point totals, right? I'm just saying that if you find some other reasons why you like those guys going over their point totals, I mean, I think you have that historical advantage there. The Spurs, when I checked last night, they were favored by 13.5. When I checked this morning, they were favored by 12.5. Over under was 224.5 last night and earlier today. I looked at 4 different against the spread trends in this matchup, and the Spurs win all of those trends. The Spurs have the 5th best record against the spread this season, 32-25-2. The Nets are 26-30-1 against the spread, so I'll give the Spurs the advantage there. The Spurs are 7-8-1 against the spread as a road favorite. Brooklyn is 11-13 against the spread as a home underdog, so I'll give the Spurs the advantage there. The Spurs have the 9th best record against the spread after a win in the NBA. They're 21-18-2. Brooklyn's 20-20-1 against the spread after a loss, so I'll give the Spurs the advantage there. And then the Spurs are 8-2 against the spread with rest disadvantage. I mentioned that they played yesterday, and Brooklyn did not. Therefore, the Spurs have rest disadvantage today. They rank 2nd best in the NBA against the spread with rest disadvantage. Brooklyn ranks 10th worst in the NBA with rest advantage. They're 4-6 against the spread with rest advantage. Well, that's not right. Oh, I probably had this mixed up. I'm just looking at team defensive efficiency, and I have the Spurs ranked 29th, and that is not true. They are 3rd best in that category. So I'm human, sometimes, especially when I'm tired, I'll make some mistakes, Please forgive me if I say something incorrect. I do my best to be as accurate as possible for you guys, though. So we changed that. And I kind of know. I've been looking at this a long time, so I kind of know when I make a typo. Brooklyn, they ranked 25th in team defensive efficiency, so they're near the bottom of the league in that regard. They allow the fourth most points in the paint per game to opposing teams. Wembanyama is the leader for San Antonio in points in the paint per game, ranks 33rd best in the NBA. I usually don't list, like I said at the start of the show, I usually don't list players that are in the bottom, past the top 50 of the NBA. But De'Aaron Fox does rank 55th best in the NBA in points in the paint per game. And then Castle ranks 61st. Brooklyn allows the second most fast break points per game to opposing teams. So Castle, once again, he's the leader for the Spurs in fast break points per game, ranks 39th best in the NBA in that category, followed by Vassell, who ranks 58th, Fox 60th, Dylan Harper 61st, Wembanyama 68th. Brooklyn actually does a good job at limiting those 3-point field goals made per game to opposing teams. They rank 5th best in that category. Brooklyn's slightly below average at limiting assists per game to opposing teams. They rank 20th. Brooklyn ranked, so Castle is the leader for San Antonio in assists per game. He ranks 11th best in the NBA, followed by De'Aaron Fox, who ranks 18th best. Brooklyn, they're a little bit above average in limiting those rebounds per game to opposing teams. For all I know, they allow the most rebounds per game to opposing centers. I know that you guys a lot of people that do these player props. Wembanyama always comes across my mind every day. Is he going to get those rebounds today? Is he going to get those blocks? We'll talk about the blocks here in a second. And Brooklyn ranks 13th best in opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. So a little bit above average at defending against that. The Spurs, they rank 3rd best in the NBA in team defensive efficiency. So they are a very talented defense. Out of the major categories that I talk about, the Spurs' biggest vulnerability, according to where they rank compared to other teams, is going to be the assists allowed per game. So if I were interested in a Brooklyn prop today, the first place I would be looking is going to be assists for Brooklyn Nets players. But the Spurs are still above average at limiting those assists per game to opposing teams. They rank 12th best in that category. Their next biggest vulnerability is going to be it's going to be the 3-point field goals allowed per game. They rank 11th in that category. So, if you do like Michael Porter Jr. going over his 3-pointers or somebody dimming, I believe those are the 2 leaders for Brooklyn in 3-point field goals made per game. If you like either of those 2 going over their point total or 3-pointers today, they're not going up against a super locked down defense. And sometimes it seems like Michael Porter Jr. does good at shooting 3-pointers when he's not supposed to, when he's going up against tough defenses. And when he's going up against the easy defenses, that's when he goes 0 for 10 from downtown. So I don't have a statistic on that, but I'm interested in it. That's something else that I want to look at tomorrow. Anyways, the Spurs, they ranked 7th in points in the paint allowed per game, so they're good at defending against that. They're good at defending against those fast break points per game. They rank 2nd best in that category. They allow the 2nd fewest free throw attempts per game to opposing teams. So yeah, they're just a really good defense. Wembanyama has not had a triple-double in 4 career games against Brooklyn, but he's had a double-double in 2 out of 4 career games against Brooklyn. And he actually has some impressive block totals against Brooklyn throughout his short history throughout them. He's had 1 block. I believe that was his first game against Brooklyn. 1 block against them that game. Then he had 7, 6, and 6. So I think that's good history if you guys like Wembanyama going over his blocks tonight. Obviously, something else that I would look at is opponent blocks per game. How many times is Brooklyn getting blocked per game? They rank 18th in that category, so they're getting blocked more times per game than league average, slightly. And then obviously there's probably some other stuff you could look at. Okay. But yeah, I got to lean, and I mentioned that at the start of the show. I looked at some trends, and I'm not saying tail. Maybe you like to fade what I talk about, but I leaning with the Spurs on the money line tonight. I know that's not saying a lot, right? They're like probably minus 400 or something like that. But I did pick a couple of underdogs to win tonight. I'm really just seeing if the data that I looked at today, how that works out tonight. So it's kind of like a test run for me. So if it works out, cool. I know I'm probably on to something. And if it doesn't work out, I'll get back in the lab tomorrow and analyze it. Okay. Next game, we have Houston at Orlando. Both of these teams are on 2-game win streaks. Houston played yesterday, but Orlando did not. Houston has won 4 regular season games in a row against Orlando. Houston leads the season series 1-0. They've played 1 game this season. That game was on November 16th at Houston. This game today is in Orlando. But at Houston won that game by 4 points in overtime, 117-113. Houston has a 5-4 money line record on Thursdays this season. Orlando's 5-2 on the money line on Thursdays this season. When I looked at this line yesterday, Houston was favored by 1.5. I looked at 10 a.m. Eastern time today. Houston was favored by 2.5. Looked at 4 different against the spread trends. In this matchup, I give Houston advantages in 3 out of 4 of those trends. Houston has the 8th worst against the spread record, but Orlando has the 5th worst. So I'll give Houston the advantage there. Houston, they're 10-14 against the spread as a road favorite. Orlando's 2-1 against the spread as a home underdog. So I'll give Orlando the advantage there. Houston has the 5th worst against the spread record after a win. Orlando has the 4th worst against the spread record after a win. So I'll barely give Houston the advantage there. And then Houston, they're 6-5 against the spread with rest disadvantage. I mentioned that they played yesterday and Orlando did not. Houston 6-5 against the spread with rest disadvantage. Orlando's 3-8 against the spread with rest advantage, which ranks 4th worst in the NBA. These are 2 above average defensive teams in regards to team defensive efficiency. Houston ranks 4th best in the NBA. Where is Houston vulnerable? Their biggest vulnerability is going to be the fast break points per game allowed per game. They rank 16th in that category, so slightly below average. Defending against that, with Wagner being out for Orlando, I think he's been out for quite some time now, right? Anthony Black is the leader for Orlando in fast break points per game, ranked 16th best in the NBA, followed by Banchero, who ranks 34th, Desmond Bane, who ranks 49th. The next biggest vulnerability for Houston is going to be the points in the paint allowed per game, but they are still above average at defending against that. They rank 11th best in the NBA in that category. But if I were interested in, a point player here for Orlando, those would be the first 2 spots I would be looking at. Who's good at scoring fast break points? Who's good at scoring points in the paint per game? Those would be, point totals would be the first thing that I would probably look at for Orlando props today. And then, Houston ranks 3rd best in 3-point field goals allowed per game. So I think 3-point shooters for Orlando probably have a difficult task just in general, right? So Desmond Bane, I believe, is that 3-point guy here for Orlando. 3-point attempts. I mean, he's been chucking up a lot of threes lately. 8 in his last game, 6, 9, 5, 11. So I think he's at a disadvantage tonight unless unless he has good history against Kevin Durant, who I would think would be his primary defender since they're both listed as small forwards. But maybe they'll stick somebody else on Desmond Bain, uh, or is Desmond Bain? Does he have good history against Houston? Is he is he making a lot of 3-point field goals this season or as of late? Okay. Houston also ranks second best in assists allowed per game. So I think assists are going to be tough to come across tonight for Orlando. Now, if somebody ends up having 15 assists for Orlando tonight, please don't come back here and said, Bettors, you said that Orlando wasn't going to get any assists tonight. No. Well, I'm just saying that like anything could happen, right? Any given Sunday, same with basketball. In this case, any given Thursday, anything can happen. But generally speaking, I think it's going to be tough for Orlando players to pick up assists tonight because Houston allows the second fewest assists per game to opposing teams and the third fewest rebounds per game to opposing teams. Houston, um, they rank eighth in opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. So they're above average in that regard. And I don't know if I mentioned this with Orlando, but they rank 25th in opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. So I think Durant, who ranks 19th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game, Şengün, who ranks 25th, and Amin Thompson, who ranks 33rd. I think those three guys, if you like them going over their point total today, I think they have a bigger likelihood of getting to the free throw line today and getting an opportunity for a couple of relatively easy buckets at the free throw line than some other days. Şengün has not had a triple double in 8 career games against Orlando. He has had a double double in 5 out of 8 career games against Orlando. Banchero hasn't had a triple double in 6 career games against Houston, but he's had a double double in 1 out of 6 career games against Houston. And then was Houston one of the teams that I said that I liked, or what the data led me to believe? Whenever I whenever at the start of the show, yeah, Houston was okay. Portland at Chicago. Hot take of the day here: Chicago wins this game. They are on a 10-game losing streak. I don't necessarily like this, but hey, let's see if it works out. Portland 1-game losing streak at Chicago, 10-game losing streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. Chicago's won 2 regular season games in a row against Portland. Chicago has beat Portland 1 time this season. That game was on November 19th at Portland, and Chicago won by 1 point, 122 to 121. Portland has a 4-1 money line record on Thursdays this season. Chicago's 1-3 on the money line on Thursdays this season. When I checked this line last night, Portland was favored by 3.5. When I checked this morning, Portland was favored by 4.5. Looked at 3 different against the spread trends in this matchup, and Portland has advantages in 2 out of 3 of those trends. Portland does have the 8th best against the spread record in the NBA. Chicago has the 7th worst, so I'll give Portland the advantage there. Portland 6-6 against the spread as a road favorite. Chicago's 9-8 against the spread as a home underdog. So I'll give Chicago the slight advantage there. And then Portland, they're 17-13 against the spread after a loss. Chicago has the worst record against the spread after a loss. So I'll give Portland the advantage there. Team defensive efficiency, Chicago ranks 26th. So they're pretty bad defensively. And they allow the 5th most points in the paint per game to opposing teams. But the top 2 points in the paint per game scorers for Portland are out tonight, Avdia and Sharp. So if I were looking to, pick a Portland player going over their point total today, I would maybe go to NBA.com and look further down that list. Who scores the most points in the paint per game besides those 2 for Portland? Fast break points allowed per game, Chicago slightly below average at defending against that. They rank 18th in that category. But with those 2 major injuries or absences, I should say, I don't know if they're injured or not. Maybe they are. I said at the start of the show. But with those 2 absences, Thibault is going to be the leader for Portland in fast break points per game. He ranks 65th best in the NBA. Chicago, a little bit below average in limiting those 3-point field goals allowed per game to opposing teams as well. They rank 23rd in that category. Kamara is the leader for uh, Portland in 3-point field goals made per game. He ranks 30th best in the NBA, followed by Jeremy Grant, who ranks 44th. 44th. Avdia ranks 47th, but he's out today. And it's Krejci, who ranks 48th, and then Sharp, who ranks 49th, who I believe I said is out as well, right? Chicago allows the third most assists per game to opposing teams. I didn't look down the list to see who leads Portland in assists per game other than Avdia, but I think that's where really Chicago's biggest weakness is, according to where they rank out of all these categories that I'm talking about. It's going to be the assist allowed per game. So that would be the first spot that I would, look at for Portland player props, assists, and then who's good at scoring those points in the paint per game for Portland. Rebounds allowed per game. Chicago ranks 20th in that category, so a little bit below average at limiting that. Klingon is the leader for for Portland and ranks third best in the NBA in rebounds per game. Chicago actually does a pretty decent job at limiting those opponent free throw attempts per game. They rank 12th best in that category. And then Portland, they rank 19th in team defensive efficiency. So they're a little bit below average in that regard. They rank 16th in points in the paint allowed per game, so just a little bit below average at defending against that. Let's talk about where Portland's most vulnerable according to where they rank first and foremost. They rank 28th in fast break points allowed per game, so they allow the third most fast break points per game. Giddey is the leader for Chicago and ranks 33rd best in the NBA in fast break points per game, followed by Bucelis, who ranks 53rd, Trey Jones 80th, and then Sexton 98th. The next biggest vulnerability for Portland in regards to where they rank compared to other teams in these major categories that I talked about is going to be the assists allowed per game. Portland ranks 17th in that category. Trey Jones is the leader for Chicago in assists per game, ranks 24th best in the NBA. Next biggest vulnerability, points in the paint allowed per game. Portland ranks 16th in that category. Giddey is the leader for Chicago in points in the paint per game, ranks 57th best in the NBA, followed by Trey Jones, who ranks 83rd. And then 3-point field goals allowed per game. Portland is right at the average mark. They rank 15th in 3-point field goals allowed per game. Anthony Simons is out. Unfortunately, this could have been a good revenge spot for him, considering he used to play for Portland. But the next man up is going to be Bucelis, who ranks 50th best in the NBA in 3-point field goals made per game. And then Jalen Smith, who I believe is doubtful, right? This is what I said at the start of the show, who ranks 101st. Portland does a good job at limiting those rebounds per game to opposing teams. They rank 9th best in that category. They're a little bit below average at limiting those free throw attempts per game to opposing teams. So Sexton is the leader for Chicago, ranks 58th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game. Then it's Trey Jones, who ranks 59th. And then Josh Giddey has had a triple-double in 2 out of 12 career games against Portland. He's had a double-double in 4 out of 12 career games against Portland, which includes those 2 triple-double games. I think, the history, and not just with this prop, but with every prop, and I mentioned this on other shows, I think what a player, if you're thinking about taking a player going over their point total or whatever prop that may be, and let's say that they've played this team, let's say that they've played a team 20 times throughout history, and they've only gone over their point total against that team in 3 of those games. I think the historical factor in that means less if that player is averaging, let's say it's points. They're averaging more points per 40 minutes this season than they have throughout their entire career. You can find that information at ESPN.com if you look at Like if you search, let's just say you search for Josh Giddey stats, go to ESPN.com, go to the advanced stats, and you'll see it'll say A40, R40, P40, and it'll give you what they have averaged per 40 minutes that they're on the court throughout their entire career. So I think that's a pretty valuable information. But yeah, let's see. Let's see if Chicago wins this. Okay, Sacramento, 1-game losing streak. Dallas, 2-game win streak. Sacramento did play yesterday, but Dallas did not. Dallas has won one regular season game in a row against Sacramento. These teams have played against each other twice this season, and each of them have won one matchup against each other. The first meeting was on December 27th at Sacramento, and Sacramento won that game by 6 points, 113 to 107. The most recent meeting was on January 6th at Sacramento, and Dallas won that game by 2 points, 100 to 98. Sacramento has an 0-6, a 0-6 money line record on Thursdays this season. Dallas is 3-6 on the money line on Thursdays this season. When I checked this line, I didn't get a chance to check it last night, but when I looked this morning, Dallas was favored by 6.5 points over under 236.5. That was at 10 a.m. Eastern time this morning. So you may be looking at your odds right now, and you like keeping track of how that line movement works, which I think is could be very valuable as well. Which is a big reason why I mentioned that's why I look at this stuff and mention it on the shows, so you guys can kind of keep track of that line movement. But I looked at 4 different against the spread trends in this matchup, and it's split down the middle 2-2. Sacramento has the worst against the spread record in the NBA. Dallas has the 8th worst, so I'll give Dallas the advantage there. Sacramento has the worst record against the spread as a road underdog. Dallas has the 2nd worst record against the spread as a home favorite, but I'll give Sacramento the advantage due to win percentage. Sacramento is 11-19 against the spread as a road underdog. Dallas is 4-7 against the spread as a home favorite. So I'll give Sacramento the advantage due to win percentage. And then Sacramento 17-29 against the spread after a loss, which ranks 2nd worst in the NBA. Dallas is 9-11 against the spread after a win. So I'll give Dallas the advantage there. And Sacramento 6-13 against the spread with rest disadvantage. Dallas is 4-11 against the spread with rest advantage. So I'll give Sacramento the advantage there. So those trends are split down the middle 2-2. Let's talk about Sacramento's defense. They rank 2nd worst in team defensive efficiency. So they rank 29th in that category. They allow the 3rd most points in the paint per game to opposing teams, with Cooper Flagg being out tonight. Marshall is that next man up for Dallas, who leads this team in points in the paint per game. He ranks 52nd best in the NBA, followed by Bagley, who ranks 70th, and PJ Washington, who I believe I said was out or questionable. You may want to check at the start of the show. Yeah, I'm seeing that he's out. So if you guys do like Marshall or Bagley going over their point total today for some reason, I think they do have, generally speaking, sizable points in the paint per game advantage going up against a team who allows the 3rd most points in the paint per game to opposing teams. Okay, and then Sacramento allows the 5th most assists per game to opposing teams. So with Cooper Flagg being out, the next leader in assists per game for Dallas is going to be Brandon Williams, who ranks 55th, and then Marshall, who ranks 85th. Sacramento actually does a pretty decent job. Well, I'll get to that. Sacramento ranks 18th in rebounds allowed per game, so slightly below average, with PJ Washington and Cooper Flagg being out and Gafford being doubtful. I don't know who that next leader is. But if you're interested in a rebound prop for Dallas, I would look down that list a little bit. I would think that probably Marvin Bagley would be the guy who's eating up the boards tonight for Dallas, since he's the projected starting center here today for them. But Sacramento does pretty good at limiting those fast break points per game. They rank 10th best in that category. They're a little bit above average at limiting those 3-point field goals allowed per game to opposing teams, too. They rank 14th in 3-point field goals allowed per game to opposing teams. But I went ahead and listed some Dallas players that are good at getting those 3-point field goals made per game anyways, since Sacramento's just slightly above average at defending against that. Klay Thompson is the leader for Dallas. He ranks 17th in three-point field goals made per game, followed by Max Christie, who ranks 39th. And Sacramento allows the seventh most free throw attempts per game to opposing teams. So with Flag being out, Marshall would be that next leader, who ranks 40th in free throw attempts per game, and then Brandon Williams, who ranks 42nd. So let's talk about Dallas's defense. They rank 14th in team defensive efficiency, so they're pretty good. But Dallas, guys, they are bad at defending against those points in the paint per game. They allow the most points in the paint per game to opposing teams. So with Sabonis, obviously, I think he's out for the season, right? Renault's is going to be the leader for Sacramento in points in the paint per game. He ranks 74th best in the NBA. Now, it's spelled Raynaud. Whenever I looked at that pronunciation thing, he pronounces it like Renault's. So, just wanted to clarify who I was talking about. Sometimes the pronunciations are a little off, and I know if they're like a relatively new player or you don't watch the NBA a whole lot, that can be confusing. So Raynaud, from my understanding, is the leader in points in the paint per game for Sacramento tonight out of available Sacramento players. And then Dallas, they rank 17th in fast break points allowed per game. With Levine being out for the season, right? I think it's going to be, I think he's out for the season. Keegan Murray is the next leader for Sacramento in points, fast break points per game. And then Malik Monk, 84th best in the NBA. Dallas does a good job at limiting those three-point field goals made per game to opposing teams. They rank sixth best in that category. They allow the fourth most rebounds per game to opposing teams. So it sounds like Dallas is pretty vulnerable in the paint. Renault's ranks best on the team for Sacramento, 36th best in the NBA in rebounds per game. And then Dallas is a little bit below average in limiting those assists per game to opposing teams. They rank 22nd in that category. So Russell Westbrook is the leader for Sacramento and ranks 17th best in the NBA in assists per game. Dallas also ranks ninth best in opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. So I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for those, generally speaking, for those free throw attempt leaders for Sacramento to get to the line tonight. Russell Westbrook has not had a triple-double in his last 25 career games against Dallas, but he's had a double-double in 5 of his last 25 career games against Dallas. And then we have the Lakers at Phoenix Suns. Both of these teams are on 2-game losing streaks. Neither of these teams played yesterday. Phoenix has won 1 regular season game in a row against the Lakers. These teams have played against each other 3 times this season, and Phoenix has won 2 out of 3 of those meetings. The first meeting was on December 1st at LA. This one, once again, is in Phoenix tonight. But Phoenix won that game by 17 points, 125-108. My guess is that like Booker and Brooks were probably playing in that one, which they're unavailable to play tonight. I'm not, the reason why I list this stuff is so maybe you guys are interested in going to check that box score. I think it just makes it easier for you guys to maybe go look at that box score if I mention what date they played on. Anyways, the second meeting was on December 14th at Phoenix, and the Lakers won that game by 2 points, 116-114. The most recent meeting was on December 23rd at Phoenix, and Phoenix won 132-108. The Lakers have a 4-3 money line record on Thursdays this season. Phoenix is 4-3 on the money line on Thursdays this season. The Lakers have won 3 consecutive games that they've played against any team on this exact date, February 26th. From my understanding, you may want to double check this on me. Marcus Smart, the projected starting small forward for the Lakers, scored his career high in points. Now, I think there's probably some hesitancy with Marcus Smart, right? He hasn't really been doing much lately. But if you do like him for some reason tonight, just because he's cold doesn't mean he can't start. I'm not saying that he will or won't, but what I am saying is that, from my understanding, he scored his career high in points against Phoenix on January 18th of 2020, he scored 37 total points in that game. That game was in Boston, though. This game tonight, obviously in Phoenix. But, he did, from my understanding, score his career high in points against this same Phoenix team. Also, we have a revenge spot, a revenge alert. DeAndre Ayton, he was traded from the Suns to Portland back in 2023. Now he's with the Lakers going up against his former team. I'm excited to see how he does or doesn't perform tonight. Okay, the Lakers, they were favored by 4.5 when I checked this line yesterday. When I looked this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time, they were favored by 5.5. Looked at 3 different against the spread trends in this one, and the Lakers have advantages in 2 out of 3 of those trends. Phoenix does have the second best against the spread record in the NBA. They're 35-24 compared to the Lakers 30-27. So I'll give Phoenix the advantage there. But the Lakers are 10-5 against the spread as a road favorite, and Phoenix is 8-5 against the spread as a home underdog. So I'll give the Lakers the advantage there. Then the Lakers are 15-7 against the spread after a loss, and Phoenix is 15-10 against the spread after a loss. So I'll give the Lakers the advantage there. Let's talk about Phoenix's team defensive efficiency. They are really good in regards to team defensive efficiency, but I would maybe see how they've been doing as of late. I think Booker and Brooks have been out for at least a couple of games. I know that NBA TeamRankings.com, they will let you filter it by what teams allow in the last 3 games. I think that could be maybe a little bit more accurate. I don't know if their defense is better or worse without these players, but I think that's definitely worth looking into. There's a lot of different things you could look at in regards to that. There's also a source, it's like best defenders, worst defenders list in the NBA. It's craftednba.com. It'll give you a list of the best defenders in the NBA, worst defenders in the NBA. But let's talk about, how Phoenix has done throughout the season, okay? Their biggest vulnerability is going to be those free throw attempts allowed per game. They rank 19th in that category, so a little bit below average. So I think for Doncic tonight, it could mean more opportunity to shoot free throw attempts, considering that not only does he lead the NBA in free throw attempts per game, but he not only leads the Lakers, but he leads the NBA in free throw attempts per game. And then Phoenix's next biggest vulnerability is going to be the rebounds allowed per game. So Ayton ranks first on the team, 20th best in the NBA in rebounds per game, followed by Doncic, who ranks 27th. And then, Phoenix's next biggest vulnerability is going to be the points in the paint allowed per game, but they are still above average at defending against that. They rank 10th best in that category, 6th best in fast break points allowed per game, 4th best in three-point field goals allowed per game, 5th best in assists allowed per game. So they are a talented defensive team, or what they at least were whenever Brooks and Booker were playing. So we'll see tonight. Like I said, though, guys, there's probably been a couple games, I think, that those guys have been out, right? Devin Booker, he's been out. He's missed the last 3 games. Dillon Brooks has missed the last 2 games. So I think really he looks like he left that game early against Orlando. So, where he just didn't play a lot. So, let's go look real quick. Points in the paint allowed per game. Let's go see what Phoenix has done. Now, just because, let's say Phoenix has allowed the most points in the paint per game in the last 3 games. I think that somewhat has to be matchup dependent too, depending on who they played. We got to take that into consideration. But it looks like they're about average in their last 3, What about 3-point field goals allowed per game? Because I know there's some Lakers, right, that like to shoot some threes. Let's just go check the last 3 games here. Phoenix has still done a good job at defending against those 3-point field goals in the last 3 games. But I don't know who they've played. Maybe this is the most talented 3-point shooting team that they've played in the last 3 games. Let's talk about the Lakers defense. They rank 24th in team defensive efficiency, so they're pretty bad defensively in that regard. Their biggest vulnerability is going to be the points in the paint allowed per game and the assists allowed per game. They rank 21st in points in the paint allowed per game, so slightly below average, not terrible. Mark Williams is the leader for Phoenix in points in the paint per game. He ranks 48th best in the NBA. And then those assists, with Devin Booker being out, once again, the Lakers rank 21st in assists allowed per game, so a little bit below average. And with Booker being out, Gillespie is going to be the leader there for Phoenix in assists per game, ranks 39th best in the NBA in that category. And then the Lakers' next vulnerability is going to be the 3-point field goals allowed per game, just a little bit below average. They rank 17th in that category. Gillespie is the leader for Phoenix. He ranks 14th best in the NBA in 3-point field goals made per game, followed by Royce O'Neal, who ranks 23rd. And with Brooks and Booker being out, it's going to be Jordan Goodwin, who I believe that he's out as well, right? I didn't mention that at the start of the show, but yeah, Jordan Goodwin is out with a calf issue for Phoenix tonight. Okay, what else here? Did I mention fast break points allowed per game? Lakers are average at defending against that. With Booker, they rank 15th in that category. So with Booker being out, Grayson Allen is the next man up in fast break points per game for Phoenix, but he ranks 121st. Then it's Royce O'Neal, who ranks 124th. Gillespie 130th, Mark Williams 133rd. Lakers, they do a good job at limiting rebounds per game. They rank second best in rebounds allowed per game to opposing teams, and fourth best in opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. LeBron has had a triple-double in 1 of his last 25 career games against Phoenix. He's had a double-double in 8 of his last 25 games against Phoenix, which includes that triple-double, a game where he had a triple-double. And then Doncic hasn't had a triple-double in his last 25 games against Phoenix. That's pretty crazy. And I know there's a little feud there with Doncic and Booker. I would have really liked to see – I always like to see that matchup, Doncic versus Booker, but unfortunately, Booker's out tonight, but still should, might be a good game. But yeah, that's pretty interesting, that Doncic hasn't had a triple-double in his last 25 games against Phoenix. But he's had a double-double in 12 of his last 25 career games against Phoenix. This is a game where I was just unsure about, Lakers or Phoenix. I was thinking maybe the Lakers money line, but Phoenix could cover was kind of what I was thinking. I'm interested to see what happens in that one. All right, Pelicans, they're on a 2-game win streak. Utah, 3-game losing streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. The Pelicans have won 5 regular season games in a row against Utah. These teams have not played against each other this season. The Pelicans have a 2-1 money line record on Thursdays this season. Utah is 2-7 on the money line on Thursdays this season. Utah has lost 4 consecutive games that they've played against any team on this exact date, February 26th. When I looked at this line at 10 a.m. Eastern time, the Pelicans were favored by 4.5, over under 242.5. Looked at 3 different against the spread trends. The Pelicans have advantages in 2 out of 3 of those search queries. The Pelicans, they have the 7th best record against the spread this season. Utah has the 9th best record against the spread, so I'll give Pelicans the advantage there. The Pelicans, they're 10-6 against the spread after a win. Utah is 21-18 against the spread after a loss, so I'll give the Pelicans the advantage there. But the Pelicans are 1-1 against the spread as a road favorite. It's not often that they're a road favorite. 1-1 against the spread as a road favorite. Utah's 13-12 against the spread as a home underdog. So I'll give Utah the slight advantage there. Both of these teams are near the bottom of the league in team defensive efficiency. Utah ranks last in that category. Utah's biggest vulnerability, let's start with the fast break points allowed per game. They allowed the fewest. So Trey Murphy is the leader for the Pelicans, but he's out today. So the next leader is going to be Jeremiah Fears in fast break points per game. He ranks 34th best in the NBA. And then it's Zion Williamson, who ranks 78th, and then Sadiq Bey, who ranks 87th. Utah also allows the most 3-point field goals made per game to opposing teams, but with Trey Murphy being out today, who ranks 8th best in the NBA in three-point field goals made per game. The next leader for the Pelicans is going to be Sadiq Bey, who ranks 71st in that category. Utah allows the most assists per game to opposing teams. Derek Queen is the leader for the Pelicans in assists per game, ranks 49th best in the NBA in that category. Utah, their next biggest vulnerability is going to be free throws allowed per game. They allow the second most free throw attempts per game to opposing teams. Zion Williamson is the leader for the Pelicans, ranked 7th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game, followed by Sadiq Bey, who ranks 46th. And then Utah, next vulnerability, rebounds allowed per game. They're not extremely bad at it, but they do rank 22nd, which is below average still. And rebounds allowed per game. That's actually one of their strong points here. And then, so Derek Queen is the leader in rebounds per game. But I think DeAndre Jordan, guys, he's been getting in the mix a little bit here. He's been back a couple of games, and he's kind of eating up those boards. That first game back, he had 15 rebounds. The second game back, 8 rebounds. So I think that statistic could be a little bit misleading with Derek Queen being that rebounds leader. Maybe DeAndre Jordan is a guy to look at. And then points in the paint allowed per game is Utah's defensive strength out of these categories that I talk about, and they're still below average at defending against that. They rank 19th in that category. Zion Williamson is the leader for the Pelicans and ranked second best in the NBA in points in the paint per game, followed by Trey Murphy, who's out. Derek Queen ranks 68th, Sadiq Bey 88th, Jeremiah Fears 89th. Let's talk about Pelicans defense. They rank 27th in team defensive efficiency, so they're near the bottom of the league in that regard as well. They allow this. Where's their biggest vulnerability? It's going to be the three-point field goals allowed per game. So with Markkanen being out tonight, Keontae George being out tonight, there goes the 2 three-point field goals made per game leaders for Utah. The next man up is going to be Sensabaugh, who ranks 78th in that category. Next biggest vulnerability for the Pelicans is going to be the rebounds allowed per game. They allow the third most per game to opposing teams. Excuse me. Nurkic is the leader for Utah, ranks 9th best in the NBA in rebounds per game, followed by Markkanen, who's out, who ranks 41st, and then Filipowski, who ranks 45th. And then the Pelicans assists allowed per game. They rank 27th, so they allow the 4th most assists per game to opposing teams. Collier is the leader for Utah, ranks 9th best in assists per game, followed by Keontae George, who ranks 14th, but he's out. Nurkic, who ranks 38th in assists per game. But, I think Keontae George and Markkanen are kind of the offensive scores there for Utah. So with those guys being out, yeah, I do see Collier has a good advantage here, but I'm just a little bit worried if some of these other guys are going to make those buckets when Collier does pass them the ball, and then points in the paint allowed per game. Pelicans ranked 25th, so 6th worst. Pelicans allowed the 6th most points in the paint per game to opposing teams. So with Markkanen being out, Jaren Jackson being out, looks like Kessler, if he's available tonight, is going to be that next points in the paint leader for Utah, ranks 65th best in the NBA. And then fast break points allowed per game. The Pelicans rank 22nd in that category. Collier is going to be the leader out of available Utah Jazz players tonight in fast break points per game. He ranks 45th, followed by Sensabaugh, who ranks 86th. And then the Pelicans' strong point is the opponent free throw attempts allowed per game, but they're still a little bit below average at that. They rank 16th in that category. So with these absences, Collier is going to be the leader. out of available Utah Jazz players tonight in free throw attempts per game. And then the last game that we have here is Minnesota, who are on a 1-game win streak, at the Clippers, who are on a 2-game losing streak. Neither of these teams played yesterday. The Clippers have won one regular season game in a row against Minnesota. These teams have played against each other twice this season. Each team has won a game. The first game was on December 6th at Minnesota, and Minnesota won 109-106. The most recent meeting was on February 8th at Minnesota, and the Clippers won that game by 19 points, 115-96. Minnesota has a 3-2 money line record on Thursdays this season. The Clippers are 3-4 on the money line on Thursdays this season. When I checked this line last night, Minnesota was favored by 4.5. This morning I saw that they were favored by 5.5. The over/under was 225.5 in both times that I looked. Looked at 3 different against the spread trends in this one. The Clippers have advantages in all 3 of those trends. The Timberwolves have the 4th worst record against the spread this season. They're 25-34 against the spread. The Clippers are 29-28, so I'll give the Clippers the advantage there. Minnesota's 8-12 against the spread as a road favorite, which ranks 10th worst in the NBA, compared to the Clippers, who rank who are 5-3 against the spread as a home underdog, which ranks 8th best. So I'll give the Clippers the advantage there. And then Minnesota, they're 14-21 against the spread after a win. The Clippers are 13-16 against the spread after a loss. So I'll give the Clippers the advantage there again. Minnesota, they're a pretty good defensive team. They rank 9th best in team defensive efficiency. Their biggest vulnerability is going to be opponent free throw attempts allowed per game. They allow the 5th most. So I could see Kawhi Leonard possibly taking advantage of that tonight if he plays. He ranks 14th best. By the way, I'll look at these injury updates one more time before I in the stream. But yeah, Kawhi Leonard ranks 1st on the team, 14th best in the NBA in free throw attempts per game. The next vulnerability for Minnesota is going to be the rebounds allowed per game, which there's Kawhi Leonard again, ranks 1st on the team, 51st best in the NBA in rebounds per game. And then it's going to be the points in the paint allowed per game, which Minnesota ranks 14th, so right about average. Kawhi Leonard is the leader for the Clippers and ranks 27th best in the NBA in points in the paint per game, followed by John Collins, who ranks 84th, but he's questionable. Garland, who's out, ranks 93rd, and Mathurin, who ranks 139th. The Timberwolves, they rank 11th in assists allowed per game. So if you do like assist props for the Clippers tonight, I don't think you're going up against a extremely tough task, right? But they are above average at limiting those. Minnesota is. And then Minnesota ranks 8th best in 3-point field goals allowed per game to opposing teams and 7th best in fast break points allowed to opposing teams. And then we have the Clippers, who rank 20th in team defensive efficiency. So they're a little bit below average in that regard. Their biggest vulnerability is going to be the fast break points allowed per game. They rank 23rd in that category, so a little bit below average. At limiting that, Dosunmu would be the leader for Minnesota in fast break points per game. He ranks 15th best in the NBA, followed by Anthony Edwards, who ranks 17th, McDaniels, who ranks 56th, and Julius Randle, who ranks 69th. Next vulnerability is going to be the 3-point defense for the Clippers. They're a little bit below average at limiting that. They rank 19th best in the NBA in that category. So Anthony Edwards is the leader for Minnesota in 3-point field goals made per game, ranks 6th best in the NBA, followed by DiVincenzo, who ranks 10th, and Naz Reid, who ranks 38th. The Clippers, their next vulnerability is going to be the assists allowed per game, but they're still above average at that. They rank 10th best in that category, 9th best in points in the paint allowed per game, 4th best in rebounds allowed per game, 5th best in opponent free throws allowed per game. So pretty solid defensive team, except for the fast break points allowed per game, 3-point field goals allowed per game. Those would be their 2 biggest weaknesses. And then let me update the rotowire.com to see if we have any more injury information that I could update you guys with here. Let me just scroll through this real quick. Looks like Castle. I don't believe he was questionable when I started the stream, but I'm seeing that Castle's questionable to play for the Spurs tonight due to a left hip issue. And same with Keldon Johnson. Keldon Johnson is now questionable, according to rotowire.com, with a left shoulder sprain. Klingon, questionable for Portland, dealing with an illness, so he's questionable for Portland tonight. Malik Monk, questionable for Sacramento with ankle soreness. Keegan Murray for Sacramento, out with an ankle sprain. Russell Westbrook for Sacramento, out with a bruised right thigh. Hachimura for the Lakers. I don't know if I mentioned him or not. Questionable to play with an illness tonight. And that looks like about it for the ones. Did I mention Jalen Suggs is questionable? I think I probably did, but he is questionable with a back issue. But those look like the ones that have updated since I started the live stream. So those are the most up-to-date injury information. But yeah, I would definitely, keep up to date with your favorite source or this one, rotowire.com, for those injury updates. I'd like to thank you guys again for tuning in. Hopefully you guys hit tonight, or you just enjoy tuning in and learning a little bit. I enjoy having you guys here. And then also, once again, guys, at 8 p.m. Eastern time, A-Train and Dollface Gremlin are doing that hockey show, which I've tuned into the last couple times. I think this is their 4th episode. I'm pretty sure I've listened to their first 3 episodes. They're really fun to listen to. They're knowledgeable. Like I said, I'm not really even a hockey fan. I have an appreciation for any sport, but I kind of do like NHL playoff hockey. And it's getting close to that time. So looking forward to that show tonight. Feel free to tune into that. And then thank you to our sponsors. Once again, BetUS, MyBookie.ag, Walmart.com, Open Goal, the MLB and NFL Pro Shops, and W Energy Drinks. All right, everybody, take care. Good luck today, and I'll see you guys soon. Oh, by the way, I'm doubtful to do a show tomorrow. I mentioned that at the start of the show. I'm doubtful. But I might see you guys tomorrow. If not, I'll do my best to get back on here Saturday, okay? All right, take care, everybody. Good luck.
This non-casual podcast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or reused without the authorized written consent of the Not Move Podcast Network. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.